He thought she is weak, but now she commands the galaxy. The desert moons of Kelvin 3 shimmered with heat that wasn't entirely natural. Plasma residue from the orbital bombardment still baked the red rocks days after the ceasefire was called. The war had ended, sort of. Nobody truly won in these kinds of conflicts, just varying levels of not dead. Sergeant Theoro stood in the middle of a wrecked command outpost, swiping sweat from his brow and adjusting the tactical strap across his chest. The badge on his shoulder marked him as hero of the Ember Line, but most people translated that to poor guy who didn't duck fast enough. He stepped over a collapsed steel beam, nudged aside a smoldering panel, and made his way toward a holding pen flanked by two bored-looking guards. The real spoils of war, the officers had told him, were kept here. Former prisoners, weapons tech, data banks, a reward fitting for those who bled hardest, the commander had said. Theo had bled a lot. He still had shrapnel in his leg from the Cathari ambush and a metal fragment near his collarbone that hummed slightly whenever someone used a comlink too close. The guards barely acknowledged him as he entered the holding zone. Inside, alien prisoners sat in silence. Some glared, some wept, a few meditated with eerie serenity. Theo wasn't interested in any of them. His eyes scanned the far corner of the pen where one figure sat apart, motionless. She wasn't shackled, not visibly, just slumped on a crate like she'd run out of reasons to stand. Long ears, that was the first thing he noticed. Not stubby or curved like a Solari's, but slender and elegant, almost regal. Her hair was bright yellow, not blonde, not dyed, but the kind of yellow that hurt your eyes under certain lighting. Her skin was pale, too pale, like unexposed film, and she didn't blink, not once, just watched him with eyes the color of storm clouds. "This one," he said. The guards blinked. "Excuse me, Sergeant. That one, the Valeri. I want her." The taller guard shifted awkwardly. "Sir, she doesn't do anything. Been here for 2 weeks, no powers, no skills, no data worth extracting. Probably broken. You sure you don't want something flashier? We got a Vex Crystal AI hybrid that—" "I'm not shopping for a blender." "Jenkins," Theo said. "She's the one." The Valeri woman tilted her head slightly. Not curiosity, more like disbelief wearing a mask of politeness. Theo gave her a grin, the kind that had gotten him punched on 7 different planets and married on 2. "Name's Theo." "You?" She was silent for a beat too long, then, "Kale." "Nice. That's short, easy to scream in a firefight." He turned to the guards. "Get the paperwork and maybe a muzzle if she bites." Kale didn't smile. Yet. 3 days later, they were on board the Galliant Mule, a mid-sized transport ship that had been retrofitted so many times it now qualified as an architectural crime. Theo lived there between deployments, sharing space with a mechanic who only spoke in whistles, a medbot that believed in aromatherapy, and a crew of mostly exhausted rookies who thought him half mad and mostly lucky. Kale said nothing for the first day. Nothing on the second either. She watched. Always watched. At one point during a live fire simulation, she sat on a crate eating an orange while the recruits panicked over an armed drone. Theo leaned against a railing, arms crossed. "You sure you don't want to join? Might be fun. I don't fight good. Most of the galaxy does, and look where it got them." That night he found her in the cargo bay alone, tracing her fingers along the hull. She didn't turn when he entered. "You knew I wasn't valuable," she said. "Why did you choose me?" "Because you're interesting. I am weak. No one with eyes that intense gets to claim weak. Intimidating maybe, brooding definitely, but not weak." Her long ears twitched. "You're mocking me." "Only a little. It's how I show affection. That, and sharing the last of my cereal rations." The cereal in question was from Earth, ancient and stale, with tiny marshmallows shaped like weapons of mass destruction. Kale took one bite and visibly recoiled. "This tastes like regret and artificial blueberries." Theo beamed. "Exactly. You're getting it." In the days that followed, something shifted. Kale still said little, but she began moving differently. At first, it was just being present during training sessions. Then it was mirroring routines in secret, alone at night when she thought no one was watching. But Theo watched. She absorbed moves like a sponge, stances, holds, even faulty dodging patterns. On the 7th day, she disarmed one of the recruits mid-spar. Nobody understood how. Beginner's luck, the rookie muttered, rubbing his wrist. Kale raised a brow. Or perhaps I've secretly mastered 18 forms of combat while pretending to be fragile and mysterious. Theo laughed so hard he nearly dropped his coffee. Now that's what I'm talking about. She has jokes. Still, she flinched whenever someone called her weak. It wasn't obvious, not to the untrained eye, but Theo had seen it too many times. People conditioned to appear harmless often broke harder than the rest. The galaxy had no place for softness unless it came with a weapon attached. One afternoon, a cargo stabilizer malfunctioned during a docking maneuver. A steel beam snapped loose and crashed down toward Theo. There was no time to dodge. Kale caught it. Her feet planted, her hands steady, her face expressionless as the full weight pressed against her arms. For a second, the whole bay went silent. The crew stared. The beam creaked. Theo blinked up at her. Either you just saved my life, or I've died, and you're the prettiest hallucination I've ever had. Kale set the beam aside gently. Must have been lighter in this quadrant. He sat up, rubbing his ribs. You good? I think I'm remembering. Anything helpful? Or is it all trauma and cryptic metaphors? She looked away. A little of both. Later, he found her meditating, fingers tracing invisible lines through the air, sketching diagrams no one else could see. Her voice, when it came, was low. I wasn't chosen. I was discarded. You were misfiled, like a death ray in the kitchen drawer. Her eyes locked on his. You're not afraid of me. I'm not smart enough to be. You're foolish. I've been called worse usually while being shot at. A pause. Thank you, Theo. For what? For not picking the shiny thing. He smiled. Oh, you're shiny, Kale. You just hide it better than most. The Galliant mule drifted toward Vorak Prime, like a stubborn insect approaching a fusion-powered bug zapper. From orbit, the planet looked harmless. Lush jungles, blue oceans, temperate bands wrapping around the equator like silk scarves. It was the kind of world that featured in luxury resort ads until you zoomed in and noticed the mass graves. A pirate warlord named Graven Dern had taken over the southern hemisphere, and his concept of governance involved more chain whips than constitutions. Theo leaned back in the pilot chair, one boot on the console, chewing a protein stick that tasted like salted rubber. The screen ahead flickered with old colony schematics and recent pirate broadcasts, half of them incomprehensible. Kale stood beside him, arms crossed, staring at the planetary readout like it owed her money. So, Theo said through a mouthful of rubber, any chance you've suddenly remembered the ability to make entire fleets vanish with a wink? Kale didn't blink. Would that be helpful? I mean, I'm not saying it would solve everything, but it would definitely save me a lot of time pretending I understand orbital mechanics. She tapped the screen, isolating a docking platform hidden under jungle canopy. That's the weak point. That's also where our skulls are likely to become decorative furniture. Good. Fewer witnesses if I fail. Theo blinked. Kale, that's almost optimism. You feeling okay? I'm trying humor. It's inefficient. Tell that to the comedy circuits in our navbot. She's been trying to write stand-up routines since Corin IV. The bar experiences temporal collapse and ceases to exist. Kale didn't laugh. Theo did. The infiltration began with standard chaos. Their drop shuttle, an antique short-range craft nicknamed Toothpick, scraped into atmosphere trailing smoke and curses. Theo piloted manually, muttering things like, "This is fine," and "I'm sure that was supposed to be on fire," while Kale adjusted her restraints with unnerving calm. They hit the jungle floor harder than planned, but managed to stay in one piece. Two, if you counted the wing that decided it no longer wanted to be part of the journey. Theo limped out first, scanning the tree line. Kale followed, her feet barely making sound. The rookies, bruised but intact, looked at her like she might bite the trees into submission. Their goal: disable the main shield generator, clear a path for the resistance fleet, and not die, preferably in that order. Kale took point. She didn't ask. She just moved. Silent, fluid, focused. One pirate scout spotted them. He didn't get the chance to shout. Kale flicked a small stone off a vine. It struck the scout's temple with surgical precision, and he crumpled, like bad poetry. Theo gave a low whistle. "We're not even pretending you're normal anymore, huh?" "I was never pretending. You were just willfully oblivious." "Oblivion's comfy. Fits me like old socks." The closer they got to the shield compound, the more Kale changed. Not outwardly, but there was something in her posture now, something uncoiled. The others felt it too. One recruit whispered, "She doesn't breathe like us." Theo didn't correct him. She did breathe, but only when she remembered to. Inside the compound, the layout was tighter than the schematic suggested. Pirates paced the corridors in lazy patrols, overconfident and poorly trained. Kale dispatched them with mechanical efficiency. One guard tried to raise the alarm. She silenced him with a gesture, literally a psychic chokehold that melted the transmitter in his hand. When it was over, she exhaled once and said, "My aim was off." Theo raised an eyebrow. "He's unconscious and peed himself." "Off by 2.3 degrees. They reached the shield core just as the failsafes activated. The system began pulsing energy upward, a spiral of white-blue light forming a barrier around the entire facility. Theo stepped toward the control panel, poked a few buttons, and made a face. "Ah, yes, this is in Drachian script, which I do not speak or read or recognize. I once dated someone who claimed she spoke Dracon, but it turned out she just liked hissing at people." Kale brushed past him and laid her hand on the console. Her eyes dimmed for a moment, then flared. The system shut down. Theo blinked. "What just happened?" I remembered how Valari taught Dracons to build this interface. It was buried under trauma, or laziness, both. They evacuated just as the resistance ships began their descent. Explosions rocked the compound behind them. Kale didn't flinch. Theo, on the other hand, cursed like a poet with a hammer. Back on the Gallant Mule, the team celebrated with rehydrated noodles and off-key singing. Kale sat in the corner, silent. Theo joined her with 2 mugs of synth coffee. "You know they're terrified of you, right?" "They should be." She turned. "Why do you keep helping me?" "Because one day, I'll need you to carry another steel beam off my face." "That's a poor strategy." "Yeah, well, I'm known for those. Besides, you're not just strong, Kale, you're trying, that's the rare part." She didn't reply, but when he tossed her the blanket, she caught it with one hand. Theo grinned. "Look at that. A real warrior wrapping herself in 50% recycled disappointment." Kale sat down, the fabric draped across her shoulders. "It's acceptable. High praise from the Death Witch of Vorak Prime. I prefer Kale." "Right. Kale, the strongest mild-mannered disaster in the galaxy." She let him have that one. The throne room of Vargo Station, once a towering monument to Graven's ego, was now a mess of broken glass, sparking conduits, and unconscious guards. Somewhere under a pile of charred banners, someone groaned. Kale stepped over him without pause. Her armor bore scorch marks, but none of them had reached her skin. Her long ears twitched as she scanned the room. Behind her, Theo huffed up the stairs, clutching a plasma rifle like it might bite him if he looked at it wrong. "I told you we should have taken the left corridor," he panted. "And I told you the left corridor led to a plasma-fed crematorium." "Exactly. No guards, just intense warmth." Kale turned her head, expression unreadable. "Would you like to go back?" Theo considered. "No. I've developed a strong preference for being alive. Call me picky." They reached the dais. Graven Dern waited there, half his face hidden by a jagged cybernetic plate, the other sneering at them like they'd tracked mud into his murder palace. He stood slowly, clapping with mock grandeur. "I must admit," he said, voice laced with static. I never imagined the little Valeri reject would be the one to knock on my door. Kale didn't answer. She just looked at him like she was mentally measuring the width of his neck. Theo stepped in. Hey, don't sell her short. She's a lot more than a reject. She's a reformed death machine with a newfound appreciation for noodles and sarcasm. Graven's sneer deepened. And you, the human, still hiding behind better creatures. Theo gave a polite wave. Hiding's a strong word. I prefer strategic positioning adjacent to excellence. The warlord raised his weapon, an ugly thing with too many barrels and not enough safety features. Kale moved before he fired. 1 second she was beside Theo, the next she was airborne, a blur of blue and gold. She landed on the dais with a force that cracked the floor. Graven fired. The first blast missed. The second scorched the edge of Kale's shoulder plate. The third never left the chamber. Kale drove her fist into the weapon's barrel, crushing it into slag. Then came the silence. For a moment, even the hum of the station dimmed. Graven laughed. You think this ends with you winning? You don't understand what I am, what I built. I understand, Kale said, voice like cold steel. I just don't care. She struck once. Not with fury, not with vengeance, just precision. Graven dropped like a stone. Theo peeked out from behind a shattered column. Is it weird that I kinda hoped he'd monologue a bit more? That felt abrupt. Kale stood over the fallen warlord. He already said too much. They didn't linger. The resistance forces were already sweeping through the station. By the time Theo and Kale reached the command center, the battle was over. Screens lit up with footage of surrendering pirates, freed prisoners, and more than one explosion caused by someone pressing a button they really shouldn't have. Theo leaned against the console, stretching. Well, we just overthrew a pirate empire. Again. Do we get jackets this time? Maybe a mug? I toppled a warlord and all I got was this lousy ceramic beverage container. Kale didn't smile, but she did tilt her head. You want a mug? I mean, yeah, kind of. Something to remember this by. Kale tapped the console. A panel hissed open. Inside was a pristine black mug with a silver emblem, Graven's crest. Theo picked it up. You're joking. I'm not. His ego demanded commemorative drinkware. Theo cradled it like a trophy. This is the best thing that's ever happened to me. The next few days blurred. Debriefings, celebrations, half-serious knighthoods from planets they'd barely heard of. Kale, to her own surprise, was declared a hero, not just by the Valari diaspora, but by dozens of human colonies and allied systems. Children started wearing replica armor modeled after hers. Someone wrote a ballad. It was bad, but it rhymed, and that seemed to matter. Theo found her on the observation deck one evening, staring at the stars. She didn't look restless anymore, just quiet. They're calling you the strongest warrior in the galaxy now, he said, sipping from his mug. I noticed. Kind of ironic, huh? You were supposed to be the weak one. Kale's eyes didn't leave the stars. I was weak, Theo. I was afraid. I let others define me. I believed I was useless because they said I was. I only became strong when I stopped listening. Theo nodded. Yeah, but to be fair, some of that strength came from drop-kicking a four-armed mercenary through a steel wall. Also true. They stood in silence for a while. So, what now? Theo asked. I don't know. There's peace, for the first time in decades. Someone else will rise eventually. Then we'll just knock them down again, preferably without the crematorium corridors. Kale turned to him. You could leave. Go somewhere safe. Quiet. Theo looked mock-offended. And miss out on watching you. Terrify the next generation of galactic villains? Not a chance. I've already named our next shuttle Toothpick 2 the Revenge. Kale raised an eyebrow. I thought it exploded. It's a symbolic name like hope or indigestion. She didn't laugh, but her eyes softened. Later, she walked the halls of the station, nodding at familiar faces. Recruits who once flinched at her presence now saluted with pride. Engineers asked her opinion. Pilots told her their children wanted to be like her. A statue was planned. She didn't want it. Theo insisted it should at least hold a mug. In the cargo bay, she found the steel beam from their first mission, bent, where she had lifted it off Theo's back. He'd hung a sign on it. Day Kale became awesome. She touched it once. The war was over. Her past was quiet. She was no longer the prize no one wanted. She was the warrior the galaxy needed.